Hi, my name's Arthur Stein, and I am Jay Stein's brother. Really appreciate that everybody came out today. Not a very nice day. And what we're going to do is I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes, and then anybody who then has a story about Jay that they would like to tell, we'd love to hear it. Some people have already expressed an interest, which we appreciate. And then afterwards, we're just going to have a small reception. There'll be some food outside, and we can stay around in here. But, clearly the family, all of us would love to speak to you. We're here to celebrate Jay's life. And, according to Jay's obituary, this is what it said. And I shortened it a little bit. Louis J. Stein was born on August 13th, 1946 in Kansas City, Missouri, the son of Arthur and Helen Stein. He was a graduate of Lake Forest Academy in Lake Forest, Illinois, and the University of Iowa. At the University of Iowa, he earned degrees, BA, MA, and law degrees. Jay was engaged in private practice in Iowa City for 37 years, served as a magistrate judge for the 6th Judicial District Court from 2009 to 2014. Continues, Jay was a man of elegance, charm, wit, and great compassion. All who knew Jay found a man who was a dapper dresser, had perhaps the greatest supply of suspenders in the state of Iowa. He was a collector of friends, an active member of the Iowa City theater community, and a devoted husband and father. He is survived by his wife, Mary, sons David Stein and Aaron Schmidt, grandson Arlo Schmidt, and brother Arthur Stein. That is all 100% true. But it doesn't begin to describe Jay. And Jay wouldn't like it, because it sounds like Jay became an adult in the normal way on a normal schedule. And he did not. And he would not want you to think that he did. It wasn't Jay. He wasn't Ozzie and Harriet. He'd be unhappy if that description was allowed to stand. Jay was quirky. He liked it that way, especially if it made our parents unhappy, and it did. Jay's favorite movie was Harold and Maude. And if you, okay. You're all with me, I'm glad. Harold and Maude is about two quirky people who not only don't fit into the world, they don't want to fit into the world. And really, that was Jay. So first of all, let me talk a little bit about our childhood. Jay was not a cool kid. He was a bad athlete, he was overweight, he was under-socialized. I was exactly the same way. I mean, he and I were just peas in a pod then. One difference, Jay was even a worse athlete than I was. And let me tell you, it's no small accomplishment. But Jay succeeded at that. And did I mention overweight? Jay and I could not buy clothes in the boys' department at Yonkers. We had to go downstairs into the basement to what was called the Husky department. And Husky is a polite way of saying, I mean, back then, I would have said it was a polite way of saying fat, but I don't think we can say that anymore. Severely overweight. And Yonkers, they put the Husky department not only in the basement, but in a really dark, dank corner of the basement. And walking down the steps to get there was a walk of shame for my mother, my brother, and I that I will never forget. And I'm just surprised that I don't wake up screaming to this day thinking about it. I mean, it was embarrassing. Let me give you another example of how much we didn't fit in. For some reason, when we were kids, Jay and I decided to take up fencing. So it's like if you found the most uncool sport to do in Iowa, in Des Moines in the 60s, I mean, fencing would certainly be, right at the top. And I think we'd seen a movie about fencing or something. So, we had the masks and we had the, padded chest protector, and I think are called foils. And we would go out in the backyard and thrash at each other with these things because, we didn't realize at the time, but fencing takes quite a bit of, real athletic skill and stamina, and we had and training, and we didn't have any of those. So it was just, the neighbors laughed at us. What can I tell you? When Jay started high school at Roosevelt, Dick Kersner is, Jay's closest friend, for so many decades. And here's Dick's, and Dick also grew up with us in Des Moines. Our parents were, very close friends. And here's Dick's description of Jay in high school at Roosevelt. He was not a cool kid, being a little pudgy, not athletic, and socially a little awkward. He was smart and spent most of his time reading. Now that's his best friend talking, okay? And Dick doesn't lie. Jay also listened to very uncool music. He was into folk music when, no one had ever heard of it in our circle in Des Moines. No one had ever heard of it. And he was buying the Limelighters and the Kingston Trio and then really obscure albums from very obscure folk musicians. And, I didn't have any objection. I liked a lot of the folk music. But let me tell you, it's not what they were playing at the cool parties at Roosevelt High School. It just was so out there. In high school, Jay discovered girls, but girls never discovered him. And I have to say that Jay, even when given a chance, to fit in and be cool, would not accept it. So when he was 16, my parents bought Jay a Mustang, a Ford Mustang. And that was actually a cool car. And let me just say, I didn't get a car till I was 19, but I've had so many years of therapy that I don't even care anymore. And it was clearly, Jay was the oldest son, and all their hopes were there, and so he got all this stuff. Which was their mistake. Anyway. So Jay gets this very cool car, and what he decides to do is he got these big block letters, they were about this high, and he stuck them in the back window so you could read them when you were behind the car, and what they said was HMS Maird. HMS stands for His Majesty's Ship, and Maird is French for ship, okay? This is Jay in so many ways. First of all, I took something cool and made it uncool. It was incredibly puzzling. I don't get it. To this day, I don't understand it. And, Jay died very suddenly, and I never got a chance, and I'm so disappointed, but I never got a chance to ask him and talk to him about so many things. But I swear to you that if I had a chance to talk about one thing, I would ask him about that, because that whole thing just left me puzzled. I never understood what he was trying to say, and I never understood why my parents let him do it. And, now I think maybe they didn't speak French. Because, my parents were just, straight. They were just fitting right in. Appearances were very important. And, they'd spent all this money on this car, and then he trashed his ride. He pimped his ride before anybody pimped his ride. So he spent his sophomore year at Roosevelt, and, Jay was a brilliant guy. And he got into Lake Forest Academy in Illinois, which was a really great prep school. And he was there for his junior and senior year. And as it says in his biography, he graduated from Lake Forest in 1964. This is true. What it doesn't say is he did graduate, but only after getting kicked out of Lake Forest and my parents I don't know what they did to get him readmitted, because the guy I got kicked out with did not get readmitted. He was president of the senior class. And so you're asking yourselves, what did Jay get kicked out of Lake Forest Academy for? Jay got kicked out of Lake Forest Academy for smoking, are you ready for it, a cigarette. I mean, after all the things he did in his life, the one time he really got in trouble was for smoking a cigarette. And it just amazes me to this day. I'm sure at Lake Forest today, they're just happy the kids aren't shooting heroin or doing something else. But that was a time. He smoked a cigarette. It's just amazing. Then Jay went to college. While he was at college, he became a hippie. And Jay was a hippie early, and he stayed very late. He liked being a hippie. He played the guitar. He consumed drugs that are now legal in 2.5 states. He dressed fashionably for a hippie, which of course was the opposite of the way my parents dressed, so that was a good thing. It fit his personality, and I think it fit his skill set at the time. Here's Jay writing about that. He says, "There are occasions in this world when time, tide, and the man achieve perfect confluence. So it was with me in the 60s. Confluence, right? Not a word we've used a lot. Here's Dick commenting on this. We were hippies in those days when it was cool to be so, both having long hair and beards and doing things that hippies did in those days, sometimes to excess." And Dick, I have to say, when you say sometimes to excess, I have to question your definition of sometimes, and I have to question your definition of excess. But except for that, I agree with you, okay? On a lark, Jay and I took a semester off from Iowa and moved to Boston, sharing an apartment in a fairly seedy area of town. We both got jobs. Jay got a job at a Mr. Muffin shop. Well, it turns out, this is not me speaking, that Jay found out that his future was not in the wild, wacky world of muffins. Okay, and he and Dick returned to Iowa. Now, it wasn't just Jay, being a hippie. Actually, yesterday I saw a picture that Barb had of Jay and I in our beards. And I mean, this was ugly. These were the long-haired, scruffiest beards, scruffiest hair. I mean, we looked like two Taliban members. Only even a Taliban mother would have objected to this look. I mean, it was just unkempt and dirty looking. But finally, Jay graduated from Iowa in 1969. As it says in the obituary. I have to say, yes, he graduated in 1969, but only after starting at Washington University in St. Louis, quitting after one semester, going to Grandview College in Des Moines, then to the University of Iowa, then dropping out of the University of Iowa, and then going back to the University of Iowa. So by my calculations, he graduated college after 3 schools, 4 admissions, and 5 years. And that was just Jay, liked to take a sort of circuitous route. So after college, and here are Dick's comments again, Dick was invited to live on a farm in New Hampshire that was owned by a former roommate and friend of ours. About 6 months later, Jay also moved to the farm. Rural life turned out to be difficult for Jay. As an example, we had a cow that we milked by hand twice a day, and it was important that all of us do our share of work. Jay refused to milk the cow, claiming that the teats looked too much like male organs. Which is maybe, but it's a BS excuse if I've ever heard one. And Dick said they lived on a farm. It was a commune. There are I don't know how many people living there. And I went to visit one time because I was going to graduate school on the East Coast. And it was freezing cold New Hampshire winter. Snow was horrible. The barn was unheated. The cow was unheated. You did not want to go out and milk this cow at any time of the day or night. But, Jay had to participate. He had to bring in some money or something. So here's Dick speaking again. He did get a job at a college in the next town as a nude model. They called him Mr. Model. And now this is me speaking, just to make it more interesting. It was the Colby College for Women. Everybody has their destiny. Bob Dylan was destined to sing. Bill Clinton was destined to be a politician. But I don't think Jay was destined to be a nude model. The world wasn't looking for a short male Jewish version of Cindy Crawford. So that just didn't work for him. And he and Dick eventually returned to Iowa City. So Jay decided to get his master's in English. His bachelor's degree was in English. And, of course, he loved to read. He just, read everything. And he received his master's degree in English in 1972. And unfortunately, that wasn't like a great job move. He could not find a job doing anything other than managing a movie theater for my Uncle Mike, who owned a couple of movie theaters in town. And I swear to you, I think that I'm sure he made more money being a nude model than he ever did from his master's in English. So Jay, really must have been at the end of his rope. He decided to be practical. And I know that had really to be a very hard decision for him. And he decided to go to law school at the University of Iowa, and he did, and he graduated in 1977. He started at a law firm, went to another law firm, but clearly law firms, were not for Jay. It was too structured, too much pressure, was all the things, that he really didn't care for. So finally, he and Vern Robinson started their own firm, and that fit, and it fit great for Jay. And Vern, I guess, eventually became a judge. Jay stayed with the firm and was there for, many, many decades with a range of different partners. At this point, I feel like my wandering minstrel brother, finally became an adult. And he was a lawyer. He had his own firm. He became a husband and a father. He was an actor in, many, many plays in the community. And he was well known in the community. He had so many friends. He started cooking. And, it was a really wonderful thing because he became close to our parents again. He was no longer rebelling. And that was a beautiful thing. And, I give my parents credit. Jay had put them through hell in many different ways, many different times. And they just were 100% forgiving and, just when he was ready to have the relationship, they were ready to have the relationship. You know, it helped him so much they met and married Barb, and they had a wonderful son, David. Unfortunately, you know, they were two wonderful people. It just didn't work as a marriage, and so they were divorced. And, you know, that was too bad. But the other thing about Jay that I really noticed, you know, for so much of his life, he always had friends, but really he was kind of a loner. But he became a real people person. And what a people person. He had an enormous circle of friends, acquaintances. He seemed to know everybody. I've heard from so many people who have had the experience of walking around Iowa City with Jay and just being amazed at how many people knew Jay and said, "Hi, Jay," and, you know, spoke to him. It would be like every other person. Mary's brother Mike was so impressed by this when he walked around town with Jay that one time Mike was on vacation in Madeline Island in Wisconsin, and he saw a car from Johnson County, Iowa. And as a lark and a joke, he walked up to the guy who was driving the car and he said, "Do you know Jay Stein?" And the guy said, "Of course I know Jay Stein." I mean, you know, it's a true story. It's an amazing story. But, you know, as an adult, what I saw in Jay, what his values were people meant everything to him. And in the end, I mean, he wanted that wide circle of friends and acquaintances. He was happy he got it on his own terms and on his own schedule. And even as a lawyer, you know, he most enjoyed being a lawyer when he was helping people he felt like truly needed help. And, you know, Mary said, it was in the article in today's paper, what he loved the most was being able to do adoptions for people and being an advocate for children who are in difficult situations. I mean, that was my brother. I mean, he cared. Now, it also said he was dapper. And Jay was dapper, sometimes in sort of inappropriate ways. I was an old bachelor when I got married. I got married at 51, so my wife has known Jay for about 15 years. And the first time she was in Iowa City, we drove there with my parents, and this is about, 14 years ago. And we drove to Jay and Mary's house, and Jay was mowing the lawn. And it's a hot summer day, and Jay's mowing the lawn. He was wearing shorts, black knee socks, I think tennis shoes, suspenders, a dress shirt. He had a cross pen in the dress shirt, because you never know when you might need to take a note. And some kind of really goofy hat. My wife was just like, she's from the East Coast, it's like, I guess she thinks, there's some code to what you should wear when you mow the lawn. In 1987, Jay met Mary, his soulmate for life. Anyone who knows Jay and Mary knows what an incredible couple. Two people so obviously loved and cared about each other. And here's what Mary has to say. Many of you may not know how I found Jay. I was a single mom raising a 5-year-old son. My first sighting of Jay was seeing him on stage. What I saw on stage was what so many of you have written in your tributes. A big heart, a great kindness, a deep compassion, and of course, a certain quirkiness. I asked my friend Karen Wheaton to set up a blind date. The first date we had, we went to a movie. It was Burglar with Whoopi Goldberg. Jay was laughing hysterically, and I didn't even think the movie was funny. So they were, fortunately able to overcome that rocky start. Mary continues, I'd committed myself to remaining single, viewing being a mother as my sole role in life. Jay convinced me otherwise, and we were married in 1988. This past August, we celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. Jay smothered me in love, so much so that I felt a need to bring this to his attention. His most recent attempt to acquiesce to my need for less smothering was to begin mouthing "I love you," rather than stating it out loud. At virtually every turn then, walking into the room, getting out of the car, sitting across the table from one another, I had only to catch his eye, and he would, almost on cue, mouth "I love you." I thought we would grow old together and there would be so many more chances for me to meet his eye and to respond with "and me you." I know he knew our love was special and that we were lucky to have found one another. It was just such a great relationship. Of course, Jay was a very proud father of David and Aaron. He loved them and loved watching them grow into happy, successful adults. And let me just say, in the future, if you're feeling a little hungry, I hear good things about Mickey's. And, if you haven't been, go. And if you've been, and it's been a while, go again, because it's under new management. And they're really doing good things. And if you need a sculpture, Aaron Schmidt has great sculptures, and everyone should have one, I think. And, really, it should be a law. Everyone should have to have a sculpture and eat at Mickey's every week. Now, I'm a Democrat, so it doesn't seem like too much government intrusion to me. So, here's David's comment. Growing up, like almost any teenager, I didn't always think that my parents were the coolest people I knew. And Jay was not. So, astute. And, but David says, once I was past that phase, I realized just how extremely lucky I was to have someone as smart and caring as my brother. He had a knack for knowing the right path to take, sometimes in some pretty interesting situations. I'm happy to have spent that time I was able to with my dad. I have so many wonderful memories to look back on. And just to clear up this one thing one more time, I was not the one who took the Randy Newman CDs and did not return them. That was Aaron. Aaron didn't say anything about it in his comments, so I can only assume he was guilty. But David also has Jay's honesty, so he continues. With the allegations of the Steely Dan CDs, however, I am guilty as charged. Aaron's comment is this. Jay wasn't a stepfather, he was a father. He raised me as his own for over 25 years. He was understanding and compassionate through all the ups and downs. He was always supportive and encouraging in all my endeavors. He taught me to laugh, and he taught me to make others laugh. He taught me to enjoy the good things in life. He taught me to cook. I remember one of the first things we cooked together. After preparing ingredients for a stir fry and before beginning the dance with the wok, he leaned over and said, "Cooking stir fry is easy, and the ladies will love it." I didn't know how true his words were. Now I have a son, Arlo, and his mother, Jamie, loves stir fry. So, that's why the obit doesn't describe Jay. What describes Jay are the people in his life. Everybody sitting here today, so many other people who couldn't make it. It's what he knew and cared about, and the people who cared about him made him. You defined Jay, what he was and what he wanted to be. One of Jay's favorite poems is by Raymond Carver. It's called Late Fragment, and it goes like this. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on this earth. Jay was beloved by all of you, me, and so many others. That's what he wanted in life. And he loved every one of you, and that's what made his life. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to ask for comments. I have a couple of people who have already asked a comment, and I'd like Mike Powers, Mary's brother, to come first.
Art, thanks a lot. And I've come to Iowa City. I lived here for a while, and then I've come here for years to see Mary and Jay. So driving down here just the other day, I was thinking to myself in the car, I'm coming. We're coming down here to see Mary and Jay, and it's hard to get over that. So I'm here, and I've seen Mary, and I've seen Aaron and David and Nicole and Art and Dick, and I've seen all Jay's friends, but Jay. I have a few things to say, for a few minutes here. So I'm Jay's brother-in-law, and he's married to my sister Mary. And I thought to myself, so a life, so Jay Stein, a life. How do you sum up a life? You don't. You can't do that. Jay was a loving, kind, patient, funny friend and companion, partner, spouse to Mary. He adored her. He was just devoted to her. And it was amazing, and it was a beautiful thing to watch. He was an exemplary man for his sons, for David and Aaron, and he showed them how to be a grown-up human being. We listened to Art talk about how Jay became a grown-up, and he showed, I think, Aaron and David how to do that. Someone kind and curious, and he always stayed kind and curious. Jay had a perceptive and quick mind. He was gracious and selfless with my parents when they lived and in their dying. My parents have been dead for about 15 years, and they died about a year apart, and Jay was always there for them. He was more there for them than I was. And it was just a beautiful thing to watch. Totally selfless. Just, what can I do? Who could I be? How can I be for you? Jay didn't have affectations, I don't think. He did have idiosyncrasies and odd behaviors, and it's just, but they were endearing for me. He wasn't looking for, or he wasn't after what you could do for him. He really was looking for what he could do for you. In that way, and this may be one of the things that for me that I loved him so much for, is that he wasn't a climber, and he was a what you see is what you get with Jay, and that was for me just it anchored me. It just pulled me to him. Jay treated people with respect, and everybody here knows that. I was touched last night and this morning and moved, really reading the condolences, the notes, the words of sympathy in the website of the funeral home here, all these things about Jay, all the memories of Jay. And I thought, what an array, what a range, what a varied group of people, their professions, their circumstances, whether they had any power or influence or money, or whether they didn't have any at all. Whether they didn't have any money, no power, no influence, nothing. Jay was attentive to everybody. It was, I loved it. I don't think Jay, in our conversations, I don't think Jay thought of himself as a religious person. And I don't know whether he believed in God. We talked, but I don't know. But I believe in his heart, he really lived a gospel phrase, a Benedictine rule. That is, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. So that really is that's how I was for him. Many of you may have been the same, that I was a stranger and he welcomed me. So, thank you.
Is Nancy Hauserman here?
Jay was my first friend in Iowa City. I met Jay in May of 1974 when I came to Iowa City to attend law school. We met at orientation, and we have been friends since that day, always. During the years of law school, Jay and I saw each other almost every day, and we had a formal lunch together every week. It was a big deal to us. It was a serious treat. We went each week, every week, to the stateroom at the IMU. A small, and by our standards, a classy place to eat lunch. It was quiet, and most importantly to us then, they waited on us. They served us. They were respectful and talked quietly and very kindly to us. Their questions to us were only about what we wanted to eat and whether our food was to our satisfaction. Imagine that. Not one question that began with Mr. Stein or Ms. Hauserman. What exactly was the issue in this case? So we went there every week just to be waited on and to eat glorious cheeseburgers and fries. And I am really sorry, Jay's healthcare people that are here, I'm sorry. We suffered through our exams together. We did manage to find some ways to alleviate our anxieties. You can see from the picture up there, really attractive. Thank you for that one. Family might give you some idea about that alleviating anxieties. I'm not going to give any more details on that because I do know enough about the law to be really wary of statutes of limitations. Jay was my introduction into so much, including the delight of seeing lots and lots and lots of movies and seeing them for free. And in the interest of full disclosure, I have to tell you that my favorite movie of all time is Harold and Maude. I almost lost my tenure as a professor because I was asked to come into the residence halls. They had this special program, and professors were to bring in their favorite movies and share them with first-year college students. They asked. I might add, they never, ever invited me back. My son, Will, believed then that Jay was king of the world. Because thanks to him, we saw so many movies for so many years. And I have to add here that my son still thinks Jay is a king in this world. Jay hired him as a clerk while Will was preparing to go to law school. Neither Jay nor I were successful in dissuading him from that. Will confessed to me that he felt really guilty about the job because he had so much fun with Jay. I fear that Will now has a very distorted sense of the fun of practicing law. Jay was braver than I was. He actually did practice law. And he was an actor. He stood on stage in play after play, and he made me bask in the pride of being his friend. More recently, he stood up and he did his own comedy routine, putting his own shows together, daring us not to laugh. He was brave, and he was determined, and he was funny. Even our lunches were funny. I have to say that if you never had the opportunity to hear Jay give a dramatic reading of the absurd fortunes contained in the cookies at Mekong, You really missed a treat. Jay and I had lunch together once a month for most of our 40-year friendship. We knew a lot about each other, about our lives, about our families. He was so proud of his family, and he was, as I think is a theme here, so in love with his wife and his best friend, Mary. Jay and I shared almost everything with each other. We never judged the other. And luckily, we both had porous memories, so we forgot what should be forgotten. For 40 years, we talked, we listened, we sometimes cried, and we laughed. Mostly, we laughed a lot. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you so much for coming. We're going to have a reception. I hope that you're able to stick around. I know the family, we'd all love to speak with you, and we appreciate so much that you came today. Thank you.